Hi, everybody, and welcome back to yet another cracking edition of the Hold My Beer series. With me on the line is Rich and Brent Spilly. Welcome back, guys. Good to see your faces.
Good to see you,
good to see you
Rich,
guys
and
too.
good to see you, Matt.
We are trying Riverside.fm out. Got all these cool little effects and shit, so we can have a bit of fun today. Anyway, it's been a while since our last show, guys. So what's been happening in your respective worlds?
Rich, go first.
I had quite a bit of traveling. I was speaking in Romania. I did a gig there, went really well. And then I went from there to Germany to a board game convention. Then went to Amsterdam to watch Blink 182. Then I went to London for some meetings and stuff. That was cool. And then I got home, and then I was speaking in Magaliesburg on Sunday and Botswana yesterday. And now I'm back home.
Are you like a professional speaker or something?
Well, I'm a paid speaker. Professional is out for, I let the user decide. Sometimes I could be considered a very unprofessional, expensive speaker.
Expensive.
Like the other
it.
day at a gig, I was in Joburg and I spoke to Jazz at home by speaking to her through the vagina net of shouting at one of the audience members' vagina so that it would get through to Jazz. So professional, maybe not.
Doesn't sound very professional.
I don't know what just happened, but I got this terrible visualization. Anyway, yeah.
I just shouted from the stage. I was like, I always joke that when I'm on stage, I'll say, I can never speak about my wife because I'm convinced that women are connected by like a Wi-Fi, like a vagina Wi-Fi, that you speak around one of them and any other one anywhere in the world knows what you said about them and they're all connected. And I said, look, let me tell you, hey, Jazz, I left the garage door open. and then there's like a picture of the garage. Yeah.
Okay.
And you, Brent, what's been happening?
I'm not as competitive as Richard, so I just spent 2 weeks in Portugal with my family on holiday. Categorized into 4 categories: traveling overseas with a pregnant wife and a young kid in summer on cobbled streets. Difficult. Secondly, we are very poor in South Africa. I cannot believe how expensive the euro is for everything. I was just horrified. Thirdly, comparing SA versus Europe made me quite depressed. Everything was clean, functional, safe, lots of option. It was lovely. And Portugal is a good place. I think you could live there. I think you can quite comfortably bring up kids. It's good stuff.
It actually does have residents. There are people who live there.
No, they're basically all Americans. It's just
Okay.
literally shiploads of American tourists. Just like follow the flag. Hey? It was unbelievable. Like they've taken over. So pricing is a problem. You speak to your people, Matt. But I will tell you one thing, and this is, Matt's going to laugh at this, but I ended up hurting myself because I'm old playing with my kid. I tore an intercostal muscle. And I proceeded to walk into the government hospital in Lisbon at 8 o'clock on a Friday morning. And I had the best experience, better than a private hospital in South Africa. Eh? And I had bloods, ECG, X-ray, and a massage therapist. It cost me 3,000 Rand. What's that, about $150? And they said to me if I was a resident, it would have cost me €18. And I'll claim that back, right? But the fact that public hospitals on a large scale function well in places in the world, for me, was just remarkable. And obviously a different experience to a different country, not the one you'd actually want, but insightful. So that was quite entertaining. And $3,000 later and a lost day on holiday, but otherwise, good stuff.
So do you feel like you could belong in Portugal?
So what's interesting is this. So we came back from holiday and my wife and I went, okay, Portugal, cool, like cool place, got all the vibe and the history and all the pretty streets and stuff. We didn't love it. So what that means is that there are places in like Italy where you just go like, I love it there. I want to live there. It's like I have a dream about being there. Portugal's like, it's cool. You could live there. But no, I didn't feel like there was a natural sort of pull towards living in Portugal. Like it's not a place that I'm going, I want to go back to in a rush or intend to actually live there. That is definitely on the radar. And the the comparison, SA versus Europe, and specifically SA versus France, because we flew via Paris. Like, the French are just not nice people, right? They are just rude and obnoxious and like short and abrupt and obstreperous. I think that South Africans are most, on average, generally friendly, caring, jovial, helpful people. Like, we have problems in this country, but if you compare the two, very much a disparate culture. Portugal, very friendly. Language is a problem, but even so, very friendly. But looking back and you go like, well, South Africa is my home. And we were just talking before the show about the Springboks and the World Cup. And the fact that I'm not a big rugby fan or supporter, I can name one or two guys in the team. I've watched the last two games, and suddenly my emotions are going through the roof, and I'm pro-South Africa and I'm anti every other country. And it's not a rational thing. Like, you know, like that excitement, and partly because you're in an environment where there's a lot of palpable emotion potentially, but I belong to this country. It is the place that I understand. It is my homeland, right? Born and bred. And if I ever have to leave here, I think it'd be very difficult for me to not feel a sense of belonging back to South Africa. So Matt, maybe like you've got reflection living like the longest period of time outside of SA. Like, what is your belonging and what is your sense of, you know, missing or Rich used the word patriotism towards South Africa?
So this whole idea of belonging came up because I was at a charity event, fundraising event for the Denver Zoo. So it's an incredible zoo, and went through with a couple of American...
Matt, sorry, your gain, you may want to try and lift it a little bit, or maybe get your mic closer to you.
How's that? Nice? Is that better? Is that better?
Yeah,
Mildly. I bet.
My gain's all the way up here.
Okay.
Why don't you speak into the microphone like a professional?
Oh, fuck's sakes. Fine. How about this?
Even like that.
Cover your face, even better.
I think you're actually connected to a different microphone, because it doesn't change when you do that so much. There we go. That's the one.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
International flick test.
Yeah, that's what she said.
Yeah, it's anyway.
Denver Zoo.
Yeah, you ran
Denver
an
Zoo.
event.
Yeah, the zoo. Yeah. And so one of my mates is a Colombian guy, and he married an American girl, Angie. And so we were sitting there by the elephants or what have you, and he says, you know, how are you doing? Like, I'm like, well, you know, every month gets easier, you know, making more friends, building a bigger network every day. And then he said, yeah, it takes about 5 years to feel like you belong in America. So from the time that you know, for him from Colombia, he's been here for like 20 years. And then that raised like an interesting idea for me, which is belonging. Like, how do you know when and if you belong somewhere? What does belonging actually mean? What role does belonging play in your fulfillment, in your ability to feel connected to a place, a person, a region, a city, a suburb? And so, you know, being fresh to Colorado, obviously we've been here now like a year and 4 months. This idea of belonging was an interesting one, and that's what I wanted to explore with you guys today. Hence what you were saying, Brent, around you know, the box, you know, the Springboks. You feel like there's a sense of belonging to them. I don't know whether it's belonging, but I think it's more like a connection to them as part of your identity. But I think, you know, like I've lived all over the world, and another thing, like I'm never fucking living in the UK, like ever. Like I don't feel like I could ever belong there, even though I have a British passport. Colorado, I have a much stronger connection to Colorado than any other place that I've lived in the world. And I've lived in Amsterdam, I've lived in the south of France, Italy, I've lived in Scandinavia. And so I don't know what it is about this idea of belonging and the role like Colorado has specifically played in my sense of belonging here. Because I actually think that if you have a connection to a place, it's not about time. It's about the strength of that connection. Does it make sense? So yeah, I don't know. It was an interesting topic, so I wanted to explore that with you guys today.
Can I just jump in there quickly, Rich? One sec. Is that I spent just over a year in Cape Town 2 years ago, and I didn't really want to live in Cape Town. Like Joburg was my home. I was quite happy to be here. Wife was like, let's go live in the coast. It was COVID. It was like, let's go. And what I realized was that being outdoors in a pretty environment scratched some kind of value itch of mine. Like one of my values, and I didn't realize this, was I like to be in a pretty environment. So my sense of belonging to that particular space became quite apparent and quite quick, because suddenly there was a value connection, if that makes sense, where in Joburg, not necessarily a very pretty place to live, right? So I think that a question I'm going back to, and we'll speak to Rich in a second, but in terms of Colorado, I've seen your pretty pictures of your KTM literally in, looks like the Rocky Mountains or whatever the mountain range is there. And that's scratching some personal itch of yours about being outdoors or being adventurous or nature or being alone, or it's something. So a physical space, I think, sometimes ticks a box for an individual that creates a new sense of belonging. Like the UK, we understand the weather, we understand the environment. Yes, it's quite pretty. Colorado obviously has the best summer and winter of outdoors skiing and summer, beautiful mountains. So the question I was quickly ask you is, how much of the physical environment has made Colorado more attractive to you and give you more of a sense of belonging, say, than the UK?
Well, you can't compare the two places, quite frankly. I mean, if purely from an environmental perspective, I mean, I think the UK has some parts that are pretty, but when you talk about Colorado, I mean, 4 of America's top 10 national parks are in Colorado. So it's difficult to, most people want to live here. A lot of people just moving here purely because of the mountains and the weather. I mean, I was having a physio treatment on, when was it? Tuesday. And I was chatting to my therapist, and she said, she's from Nebraska, but she's been living in Colorado since 1992. And I said, why did you move here at all? She said, well, Denver's climate is just, you can't compete. It's snowing, and then you have 4 distinct seasons, and then summers are ridiculously hot. Then you have access to the most incredible mountain range, or one of the most incredible mountain ranges in America, if not the most incredible mountain range. So for me, like, I knew, but it's so interesting. Like, we actually went to Texas, Austin first, and when I got there, it was just fucking ridiculously hot. It was so humid, and I actually didn't think I'd find a place that was hotter than Africa. And let me tell you, Texas is up there. And there were mosquitoes everywhere, and like, it's beautiful, it's pretty. Lots of greenery and stuff. But I said to Nina, my wife, I said, I actually can't see how I'd spend my time on the weekends here. I don't know what I'd do. I don't want to go clubbing. I don't want to, I'm not that, I like music, but I'm not into that kind of, my life stage is very different. And it was so interesting because we'd been doing so much research on where to live in America. And if you Google best places to live in America enough times, you'll find Austin comes up a lot, Colorado, Denver comes up a lot. And so I said, well, you don't marry the first city you land in. Let's go to Denver. And so I got in touch with a friend of mine, and he said, well, why don't you come spend a week here? And here's the interesting thing. I knew for a fact that before I'd even landed in Colorado, that's where I wanted to belong. It was so weird. Like, I knew we would go there, and I knew, and I even said I joked to my wife, I said the only thing I actually had to do was sell it to my wife. But in my mind, I knew somehow there was an intuition, like, I wanted to be in Colorado. That's where I wanted to be. And it was such an interesting thing, because when we landed, it was all like, verified. When you saw the mountains and, and you start to get around and what have you, and it was like, shit, this is actually true. So I don't know, intuition played a role in that too. But I have like zero interest in belonging in other places. Doesn't make sense, because I feel like I'm connected to this place for whatever reason.
Rich?
So, I mean, I've been thinking the same thing, I guess, and just as you guys speak, it more dials it in. And I think, I talk a lot about hobbies and recreational obsessions. And I think that belonging is a weird thing. So there's an expectation. Sometimes people move to a place, and like a lot of Joburgers come down to Cape Town, and then they say Cape Townian people are rude. And I say, why are they rude? He said, well, it's so hard to make friends down here. And I think what they forget is that the Cape Townians, they haven't gone anywhere else. So they're, in their 30s, they've had their friends, for the last 20 years, and they're still friends with them. So they don't have many friend gaps that they need filling. And you've arrived down here and your friend book is empty and you're wondering why people aren't, jumping in to meet it. And the way that to fill it, the way that you do that, and Brent, the way that you did it so well was it wasn't just about the outdoors. It was about what you did in the outdoors. As you went, you started running. You find somebody to run with. You ran with them every day. And so you took advantage of what it has to offer. When you look at Matt, Matt gets on his motorbike on the weekends. He goes rides in through the mountains with amazing pictures he sends us, and he is basically choosing to take what the place is giving. I think, though, if you look at Suki, for example, I feel, Brent's wife, when she that's not her real name. I'm going way off. But I don't know if she ever tried to take from Cape Town what Cape Town had to offer. And I think that what Cape Town was a really shitty Joburg for her. So when you want to get belonging in a new place, it has to be on the level of the place you're going to. And that's why Matt did so well, and you did so well, Brent, when you moved to Cape Town. You moved to a place and you saw what it was you wanted. He was excited before he went. So he already knew what he was going to tap into. The other thing about it is you're far more likely to meet other people because you can't meet people sitting in your garden or going to a restaurant or going to the regular thing. You can maybe meet people at your kids' school sports events. But even there, what a lame context match is. Oh, we both shagged at the same year, like that's your context match. No. But if you meet somebody who's got a passion for motorcycling or for board gaming or for running or for whatever it is, you've got this great context lock. And I think that there's this big link between those two things.
But also, and in my wife's defense, is that our value systems are very different, right? So I value large volumes of friends and acquaintances and interesting conversations, not so much family, where she values close-knit family connections and a few key friends. So I was happy to move from Joburg to Cape Town and have that, because it worked for me, where she left that in Joburg, right? So again, just purely from a deep down sort of value set, there was a misalignment, and that's why she was longing to come back, because rightly so for her, that was important, where rightly for me, less important. And I had Rich to climb the mountain with, so like, why would I ever leave Cape Town, right?
Yeah. So I had a guy who I hired from Cape Town to come work with us in Joburg. And he came to Joburg and he ran our training. I'm not sure if either of you ever met him. His name is Neil. He's a really good friend of mine. He lives in Portland, Oregon now. And when he joined Missing Link, he came up and he actually found a really amazing church in Joburg. An incredible church with an amazing pastor that he was super connected to. And when you ask him, he'll tell you he preferred Joburg to Cape Town. But you see, there is no Joburg. There is no Denver, right? There is no Cape Town. All there is the version of those cities that you render by bending to the best or worst it has to offer. So he moved to Joburg and embraced the, obviously there's quite a big Christian community. He got involved in them. He found a church he really loved, and he started being more social than he was in Somerset West. He had a wider view of the world, and for him, Joburg was incredible. It was amazing. He built lifelong relationships there, but he lent in. I always joke with Neil. So Neil got the job. Now, I famously don't really socialize with my team, only at a very, very certain level. So Neil gets the job. And then he turns around and says, "Yeah, dude, I'd love to come over for dinner." And I was thinking, I don't know how to tell him that I don't do this. And he was like, yeah, cool. And then he kept on saying to me, let me know about the dinner. And I just met Jazz, my wife. And I was like, this new guy wants to come over for dinner. She's like, he's a new guy. He's just moved up here to work for you. You should definitely have him over for dinner. And he just by force of nature, willed himself in. And now he's like one of my best mates. But it's really is that people move to places. It's why South Africans get so miserable often when they move somewhere else, is because they want South Africa. They have their braais every week and they do their things, and they constantly in comparison that the Robertson spices aren't the same in the UK or the US. And I think if you want to be happy somewhere else, you have to try and be that place. What's your thoughts on that with regards to belonging?
So I think belonging fits into sort of three categories there, right? So it's physical space, it's people, and then it's organizations or hobbies, right? So I think there's places where people fit in or belong because of the physical nature of their environment. Then there's the individuals.
Well, that is a hobby thing, though, Brian. So what I mean about that, and I'm just going to put this out there, and you can let me know, is that if you're the kind of person that doesn't like the great outdoors, it doesn't matter how pretty it is outside, unless you're the kind of person like Craig Rodney, moved down to Cape Town, and he's running in the mountains every single day. It's like that's his thing.
But that's what I'm saying is that the physical space either allows you or disallows you to do hobbies, right? So if you're a physical outdoor kind of guy, don't move to London or don't move to Canada because 9 months of the year you're not going outside, right? So you're not going to belong there because there's going to be this conflict. So it's around physical space that allows you to be the hobbies that you want. So Rich, you can go live in the UK tomorrow because you mostly are quite comfortable being indoors and socializing indoors and doing hobby, gaming, and which doesn't require that much outdoors. I'm not saying you're not an outdoors guy, but I'm saying
right.
some people are comfortable. So understand where will you belong. Physical environment plays a part, which is the hobby piece. Then there's the individuals, right? Your people that are important to you, or the people that you need around you, like your minister or your running buddy or your whatever that is, right? And then there's the groups of people, I think, is the other thing. So, and that is around like the community. Now, I'm not a big community guy, right? I like my friends, I like my close friends, but I don't belong to big communities. I've got a few running buddies and I've got a few motorcycle riding buddies, but I don't belong to the badges. You know what I mean? Like that isn't important to me. So for me, going overseas, I don't need the big communities. I need the few people, and I need some physical outdoors to allow me to do certain things like run and ride my motorbikes. And then I'm generally quite happy. So, and maybe the community for me is a business community. Like, is there a healthy entrepreneurial, startup community? That could be really cool for me. But what's interesting around this is that I also think that there's a timeline, like Matt went, I don't want to go clubbing. I don't want to go like dancing out and drinking every night. But Matt, 20 years ago, Austin may have been a better call for him. So there's also a phase of life as to where you are better belonged. Is that right? No, that's a shitty word. Where you belong to better at different stages of your life. And I think you need to also be cognizant of that. You might outgrow areas as your life stage changes.
It's funny. We were chatting. I think Howard's going to probably join us in the show at some point in the future, Howard Mann. But he grew up in the streets of New York City. And then when they had his son, they was like, oh, we should probably do what people do. And he moved to Portland. And he enjoyed it for a little while. But then he realized, well, for me, growing up is running through the streets of New York City. And so they all missed it. And they brought their kid up in New York City again. It was like they thought for their life stage they wanted to be in, they needed to be there. But that wasn't enough because actually, they were both born and bred New Yorkers. And that's what they felt they needed. And I think
familiarity and shared experience, right? Like those are things that also help bond. Like that familiarity of running through New York is actually what makes him comfortable because he understood that. He knows it. He can look back at his childhood and go, that was amazing. I want to give my kid that. So like, I think those things play a part.
I think one of the biggest questions you have to ask yourself when you move, and I want to throw this back at Matt as well, because I'm not sure, I don't remember ever going for a motorbike ride with Matt in Joburg. But how much, because I reckon if I move I know that I have to reinvent. It is a reinvention opportunity. And how much are you willing to reinvent who you are if you move to another place? And I think the more that is, if you're moving to a place with beautiful mountains, you should probably become the kind of person who goes for walks in the mountains, even if you grew up in the middle of a city and you don't. Matt, where are you guys on that? Like as a family with the kids and stuff?
So I'll answer that now. One of the interesting things, Nina is on a lot of these South African moms in Colorado group sort of things on Facebook or whatever. And so she'll tell me some of the stuff that a lot of these moms are saying. And what's really interesting is how many South Africans, when they come here, even though they have access to this, to your point, Rich, this amazing opportunity, which is genuinely what I believe America is, when you think about South Africa and all the problems that it has, right? I mean, it's one's an opportunity, the other one is like, well, you better hustle. And they don't get it. Like they're not prepared to reinvent themselves in America to your point, Rich. And so with us and the kids, I do think it takes time. Like, for instance, Nina, I can't get that chick to go camping. Like, I can't actually get her to go camping. And it's not that and it's just she doesn't camp. Do you know what I mean? Like, that's her value. She doesn't want to be on the ground where there's, quote, rattlesnakes. So I'm like, look, what I'm going to do is I'm going to buy a Jeep Gladiator, and I'm going to put one of those mounted tents on the back and put a 3-inch lift on it and just make this thing a go anywhere machine. And then they can sleep up off the floor on like it was genuinely, a nice sort of bed and breakfast or whatever. But I can tell you the experience of being in the mountains she hasn't had yet. Do you know what I mean? Like, she's gone snowboarding or skiing or whatever, but the summertime experience, I mean, people literally live in the national parks for weeks, if not longer than that. That's their vibe. So I guess to answer your question more succinctly, Rich, with regards to my specific family, it's still a journey. Like, for instance, Frank, he won't go camping because he heard what mom said. You know what I mean? Yet I'm like fully sold because I've been in the mountains. It's just so fucking awesome as a family experience to be in the mountains like that, especially here. And to experience that as a family and to get the kids to be outside, like off the screens, like off the TV, off the PlayStation, and to actually reconnect to something that's really powerful for me, which is nature. And so nature is a massive aphrodisiac for me. In other words, I'm able to completely disconnect from everything when I'm on that bike and when I'm up in the mountains. And so as an experience, I've bent myself towards that. In other words, there was no way I was not doing it. Do you know what I mean?
You were never going to bend Colorado to you, right?
No.
Yeah, you can't win the other way. So by going there and embracing it, and I guess what will happen is over time, the kids will get more friends, they'll do more things with their kids' friends, and they'll find it easy and they'll become that. But for Nina, it's got to be at some point, she's got to decide, like, who do I want to be? I've got a chance to rewrite. Like, I'm reading Elon Musk's book, and there's like these different sections of his life that kind of intermix. But you'd get to the point where you could say, well, who do I want to be? What do I want to define this chapter of? And for you, Matt, it's the outdoors, it's these kind of things. And I think it's maybe difficult when somebody else decides on a place, because it's not always completely equal. Although, Brent, in your case, it was separate, right? You were decided for, but you were the one who took to it easier.
Pretty much. I also want to just say that this podcast is proudly sponsored by the Colorado Tourism Board. Like, buy your ticket today.
Yeah.
Well, you guys better get your ass over here next year, because
we got the ride happening.
Yeah.
I showed Jazz.
Yeah, we have to make a plan.
Yeah, you should.
But it was interesting, Rich, is like I knew Matt had a Harley. I don't think we ever rode, right? And we were on this.
No, we did. We rode in Joburg.
I think once. I think just once. And I don't think it was like
anyway. One time we went to the Black Horse.
Oh yeah, we went out to Michalisburg. That's right.
Yeah.
But what's interesting around that is that he's taken those skills and gone, okay, well, I don't need a Harley in the States. I need a KTM for off road, and it's given him a whole bunch of space. But I also think what's important just around this belonging thing is, I get the fact your desire to share the experience with Nina is important. But sometimes, and maybe this is also just a phase of life, is that like, well, you might need the time for yourself, for your own sense of belonging. Like, who am I, so that like I can identify to myself. And the reason I say that is that, like, in the last year, I've adopted this motorcycle camping thing. I'm not doing it anywhere near the way you are, because accessibility and time and just life. But, saying that to my wife, she's like, camping, I'm not so sure. Well, maybe we can do it. Similar, maybe we should put a tent on the roof. But like, the motorcycle camping thing is my thing. And it's my sense of belonging with one or two friends. And I want to do that. And if she wants to ever get on a bike and come on the back, or like, cool, I'm happy with that. But it's also sometimes that individuality where it's what I want to do, where she'd rather go for a, Indian head massage. I have no desire for that. So that's her thing. And she belongs to the yoga groups and the pottery groups and cool. Like, so it doesn't always mean that we have to have the same, like the Venn diagram, right? Like, where in the middle do we meet? But having our own parts of those circles is hugely important in terms of belonging.
Absolutely.
I think it's crucial.
just as long as everybody's circle in the Venn diagram is similar size, right? So that's
and
where
there is overlap, right? There's got to be overlap. There's got to be
the overlap luckily is family, right? Is that the time we spend together and the cool things we do together, even if that is we both love finding nice restaurants, or we love going to this kind of a thing, or whatever the case may be. The overlap is there by virtue of the fact that you're there together. That one can happen. You are the overlap. But it is nice to try and find some things you want to do and embrace in new cities. But again, in Matt's case, it could be really nice fancy date nights, or things, I don't know. It could be whatever, but it is definitely tricky, and I don't think people can decide for you. I think you've got to decide for yourself. You've got to decide that you want to reinvent, which I think most people don't do when they move.
But I would bring this back to the belonging thing, right? So it we spoke historically a lot about like religion or belonging to the woke movement, and I don't want to rehash that, right? But I'm curious to know that if you had to identify yourself, give yourself a label, a LinkedIn profile bio that spoke to belonging, what would that say for you? Like, who do you belong to? What do you belong to? Like, Rich, I belong to the gaming. No, like you belong to the gaming environment.
No,
what?
Absolutely not. I belong, like my Twitter profile so I love motorbikes, but I'm not a biker. I love board games, but I'm not a board gamer, right? Like I love jiu-jitsu, but I'm not a, whatever you'd call a jiu-jitsu player. Like these are things that I do, not people who I am. Who I am is the sum total of all of those things. And I understand that some people want to define themselves as a biker. That's always bothered me, is that maybe I don't like the idea of being defined as that. When people say to me, oh, you're a biker, I always correct them and say, no, I'm a motorcycle rider. And sometimes they don't get the difference, but I certainly do. This isn't my identity. I don't want to behave.
Who do you belong to? Way. So the question is, what do you, in terms of belonging,
probably the closest.
Can you classify yourself?
Probably the closest that I would still think is relevant, even though people don't think so, is I think that I'm a punk, right? So I'm punk rock. Like that's my way of thinking, my lens on the world, my view on the world is still very, very aligned with a lot of these punk rock sensibilities. And even though I don't go to punk rock shows as often anymore, I mean, I went to Blink, I went to Fuzzy Gish a few weeks ago, I still very much connect with who I am when I am there. It's the most me that I feel in any place. And that's sort of show, but it's also I try act with those sensibilities. That's probably the closest I've ever had. And you guys?
Interesting.
I don't think it's one thing. You can, because it's a feeling of being connected to something. So a place, a group, a club, a discipline, jiu-jitsu. So I think there's multiple things that fall into this belonging. I belong to this. I feel like, I belong to this community. I feel like I belong to this place.
And the more connection points to those things you have where you live, the more you belong. So Matt, if you joined a really cool jiu-jitsu club in Colorado and Denver, and then you did that on Mondays and Wednesdays, and then you did like a spider web, you did the riding on the weekends, but then you also wanted to join this, you found this really cool like dad's cooking class or the sport network, you became a coach at the kids' school or something like this, and then you found even another group of South Africans you watch rugby with, then all of a sudden all of these hooks are your anchors. But if you're hanging on by one thread to a husband or wife and thinking that's my place, I think you'll never belong.
That's great, because that is true. Because the other thing to say is like, do I still belong to South Africa? Do you know what I mean? Do I have a sense of belonging to that place? And when I was thinking about that this morning, it raised a question for me. What is home? What does home actually mean? Do you know what I mean? Like, is it a house? It's a different thing to a home. So what is a home? Because you belong to a home. But in my case, is home where I am now? Is home where I used to live or where I was born? Do you see what I mean?
So I've lived here.
Is it a decision?
Brent, I think so. I think home is less important than we think. I definitely feel culturally South African. And I think when I'm outside of South Africa, if you ask me what I belong to, I would probably say most closely the South African category. But I'll never not be Scottish. Like that is I feel Scottish. Like I'm a Scotsman. That's who I am. I am culturally South African, but I'll always be Scottish. And Matt, I think you could live in the US. You could like take one of those weird pills where you take your kid's stem cells and live to be 200, and I think you'll still feel South African.
Yeah, I agree.
So,
I agree.
can I just say the following? Is that as much as I am a closet atheist, right? Like I don't go out there and preach the word of atheism by any means. The shit that's happening with my brethren in the Middle East and Israel at the moment is interesting, because what's happened is that it's rallied a conversation around my Jewish friends, Jewish clients, the network that I have that are Jewish, and a few of like the Muslim clients and the Indian clients that I've got, right? And what's amazing around this is that I'm not a Zionist, I'm not a staunch Jew, but I am Jewish, and my kid goes to a Jewish school, and there is a threat at my Jewish kid's school, right? Like that it's a real thing. There's now guys with guns standing outside, like it's a thing. But all of a sudden, there's this weird sense of like belonging to the Jewish community. And I'm very cautious because I don't understand, and I don't want to talk about the war necessarily, but there is a sense of belonging, which I feel that I'm also being pulled to, right? People are kind of going, pick a side. Like, you need to belong here or there. And I don't want to pick a side, but my natural instinct is that I am becoming, weird enough, more proudly Jewish than I have been historically. It doesn't mean I'm religious, doesn't mean I'm pro or against, but it's belonging, right? Rich, you gagging to say something.
Yeah. But just that, what I'm gagging to say is that if we want to make world peace, we must be attacked by Martians. Okay,
Agreed.
so a common enemy is a very galvanizing force.
Sure.
It's the most galvanizing force, and so nothing will draw you together than being attacked collectively. And it's a weird thing, right? So I think I think that we fabricate more belonging than we like. It's amazing to me that I can absolutely tell you all my Muslim friends believe this, and all my Jewish friends believe that, and there is no nuance or room for argument on any side. And I think it's very funny to me. And again, a lot of them are atheists, but this is a religious war, which is weird, right? Because it is classified that way. But again, it's just the idea of somebody who's attacking an out group who's attacking an in group that you're part of is enough to rally you together within that in group. So if somebody all of a sudden came up and the government turned around and said that all board games, are going to be illegal, you can never play them anymore, and they had to be played on video games, myself and my underground board gaming friends would all of a sudden have a lot in common, because we're trying to be up against something. The reason most of us often don't feel that sense of belonging is that our lives are often quite simple and safe.
Yeah. Easy. And the interesting thing as well is the opposite of belonging, right? So people then, what are you going to say?
Sorry, well, just before we go there, because I want to plant a seed. I think the best businesses in the world do this very well. Coke and Pepsi, Adidas and Reebok, Adidas and Nike, Puma and Reebok, the McDonald's and Burger King. The greatest gift McDonald's has is Burger King's existence, right? Because they have an enemy. They have somebody to take over. So it's way easier to feel like you belong in one place when you have a common group of people on the other side that are something different. So I just want to plant that business. We can come back to it, but let's go back to your point.
No, so it's interesting is that, so it's a small sort of anecdote. So I've got a client that runs a music production business, who is a middle upper class white guy. He's probably one of the Christian denominations, not Jewish. The war happening in Israel is basically like the way I feel about the war, the Russia and the Ukrainian war. Like, there's no real attachment to it. It's just this thing that's happening. It doesn't occur to him. It doesn't think about it. He hasn't taken sides. It's immaterial. But I get a call going, Spilly, you Jewish? Yes. I've been approached by an organization who are producing a pro-Hamas advert, and they want me to do the music, which they'll pay me for. What do you think? And what's interesting to me is the fact that people who...
Pro-Hamas or pro-Palestine?
Pro-Palestine. Sorry, pro-Palestine. Right. Okay. Pro-Palestine sort of ad, right? And that's exactly how blurry this whole thing is for me, right? But pro-Palestine. What should I do? So the first question was, well, if you believe in the pro-Palestine strongly, do the ad, right? Like if you believe it, go for it. But if you don't believe it, or you don't have a real sense of either side, don't bring politics into your business. And this political conversation is very much a religious political conversation. You definitely don't want to take a religious stance as a business because you have no idea what your suppliers, your clients, your staff are, who they married, their stance. Like, why do it? And he was like, cool, thanks for answering the question. But what was amazing to me is that it almost shocked me because it's become such a big conversation piece in the last 2.5 weeks within my environment. And here is someone who works down the road from me and has no context, isn't seeing it on Twitter the way I'm seeing it, isn't seeing the conversation. So he has a very different belonging. And it jarred me because of sort of the naivety to these other environments. So I'm trying to understand is that there is belonging and then there's the not pushing back deliberately on belonging, but people that are just not part of these communities and are unaware of these communities. And I often wonder, and I'm using this particular example, but there's like so many other things where, like, Matt, you're riding bikes in Colorado and you're loving it. My gut says that half of Colorado have never thought about doing that and don't know what they're missing. So, like, I don't know whether I'm making sense here, but there's almost the opposite of belonging as well, where people just don't belong to anything. And I think that's not a great place to be. I think that it's important that you belong to a bunch of things: home, religion,
just
sports.
Remember, with your friend down the road, he doesn't belong to, and I think it's a good thing, right? So he doesn't belong to the Israel or Palestine conflict because any more than you belong to Russia and Ukraine.
Right.
But he would belong if somebody, if all of a sudden everybody from Four Ways held siege on where you guys live, all of a sudden you'd be like team anti the Four Ways people. So it is a trick. I think most people go through life not thinking about belonging until they don't. Belonging is like water, right? So we exist in a state. If you grew up in a city and you live in the city and that's all you know, you never have to think about belonging because it is your environment. It's only when you're a fish out of water you start understanding the true value of water and you try and seek the same level of comfort from somewhere else. The wrong way of doing it is to try and get the same water, the same feel. The right way of doing it is realizing, hey, I'm in a different lake, but I still have what I need. Let me go and try do. I think Matt is a great case study for just embracing it. But your friend in Joburg, he's never had to because he isn't where he belongs.
No, but what I'm saying is, so completely, and the same way I have non-affinity with so many other things that I probably don't even know exist. But it was interesting to me just how our belonging is also informed by the media, by the conversations we're having. And so we tend to pick sides based on external prompts, not necessarily always by choice.
I don't want to talk too much about the conflict, obviously, because it's very heated, but I want to talk about something more general. So on the fringe, on the outside around it, and it definitely fits the theme of belonging. And it's the idea that it really bothers me that 99% of, if you are in any way affiliated with Judaism, either by, centuries old or things like this, you absolutely believe that Israel is right. And if you're in any way involved with Islam, you absolutely believe that Palestine is right. And to me, like what I want from people, I think what we should always do when we become part of an in-group, because there's danger in that, right? When you're an in-group, you can be easily manipulated. And I mean this in any in-group you're part of. That's why somebody joins a biker gang from a love of motorbikes, but then they become a 1%er doing things that wasn't what they intended when they got involved. But they do because everybody who's in that in-group with them goes out and runs trucks, for argument's sake. And my question is, you always need to, in any single group, you need to ask yourself, what would make me part of the out-group again? Under what criteria? So if you're Jewish, you'd have to ask yourself, well, you don't have to. I would suggest that people could ask themselves, under what criteria would I change my mind? And the same, if I was a Muslim or Arab, I would ask myself, under what circumstances would I go the other way? And I think that most of us don't go in thinking about that. Like, when would I become an out-group again? We blindly accept.
But can I use a different example here, right? So we're all motorcyclists. Okay, we all ride bikes for pleasure or for transport or whatever it is, right? Now, I have it's a weird thing, and Matt will probably shoot me down for this, right? But I have like a problem, like I will never own a Harley. The idea of owning a Harley is obscene, okay? And yet, I've only ever ridden one Harley that happened to be Richard's a long time ago, okay? Where I was still on Vespa, so that was a weird experience. And everyone I know who owns a Harley goes, it's amazing. You should definitely try it. And yet somehow, this is the same conversation as under what circumstance I'm not allowing myself the opportunity to go, I should go test drive a few Harleys and then make a decision going, Harleys are shit. I'm never buying a Harley. But I'm not even doing that. But that's what I'm saying, right? But what I'm saying is that for me, but I haven't even test driven more than one Harley for around the block to make the call to go, I won't. Yet I'm a motorcyclist, and there are certain motorcycles that I will absolutely own because in my mind, those are cool or acceptable, and ones that I won't. And even some of those cool acceptables, I haven't ridden either, right? I might hate those bikes. So
Matt,
it's the research, it's the questions.
I want to go to you, but I do want, if you're going to go away from the motorbike, I'd like to make one comment on belonging on motorcycles, because I've got an observation that's very South African about that.
Okay. Yeah.
Are you going to talk about bikes as well? Do you want to go first?
Well, the only thought I had was because my dad, he hates Harley Davidsons. Like, he hates them. Like, his license plate. Firstly, he rides a Suzuki Hayabusa, which is the fastest bike you can buy.
Yeah, the Widowmaker.
And then his license plate literally says, "Your Harley is cuck." He will never belong to the club of Harley Davidson, right?
Okay, but let me tell you what's happening, what your dad will do. Your dad will be riding down the street. So in the world of motorcyclists, your dad is an in-group in sport superbikes, and his out-group is like touring road bikes or whatever. However, if he's going down the road and all of a sudden he sees a motorcyclist getting into an argument with a car at the side of the road, a weird thing's going to happen. That guy's on a Harley. Your dad doesn't know anyone. He's going to stop his motorbike. He's going to get out and he's going to start shouting with the motorcyclist at the person in the car. And I've seen myself do this where I will blindly stick up for motorcyclists. I can't say, I've never seen their face. All we've done is two things. We nodded at each other once, but it's an amazing thing. In the context of on the road, every single driver needs to understand that if you mess with one motorcyclist, you've instantly created a biker gang of every motorcyclist or every voluntary, not like a delivery bike person or things, but everyone on a motorbike. But equally, so if I'm riding at home, and I see a motorcyclist on the side of the road, it looks like they're having trouble. 100% of the time, I stop, pull over and say, hey man, are you okay? 100% of the time.
But that's your Martian analogy, right? Is that the Israelis and the Palestinians, if the Martians attack tomorrow, would turn their rockets in the same direction north,
right?
Whatever it is, right? So it's the same thing, is that we at each other until there's a bigger unified threat.
Yes.
So even it's Independence Day, right? It's the same thing. It's like,
Well, even if you go to, say, McDonald's and Burger King, that's the out group, right? But they're in groups. But they're all American.
They're fighting KFC. They're fighting KFC.
Yes. But then you might turn around and say, well, internally, it might be the finance team or the franchise owners might be different to the company owners, and they have a conflict. And I see this on a motorbike. So for people who don't know, whenever you ride a motorcyclist, and you can have a look, especially in South Africa, and Matt, I'm curious if it's the same in the US. If I ride past a motorcyclist on the road, I'll be riding, they'll be riding, and I'll do this, and they'll do this. And there's this weird code of conduct around this thing, because if it's a delivery person, it doesn't happen, right? So it's volunteer. But the one weird thing for me is this. When I'm on the motorbike, when I'm on my motorcycle, my Triumph, my Street Triple, or my Bonneville, whatever, I'd be riding, and I do this, and guaranteed everyone will do it back to me. When I'm on my Vespa and I'm riding, if I do it, people just ignore me. And it's such a weird thing, because I think, well, what are we doing this for? Is it because the bike has gears? Is it because of the shape of the bike? What is the unifying force? And for people, is the shape of the chassis, which is so weird when you think about it. But yeah, we always want to draw out groups, even in groups.
But can I just make 2 points here? So the first thing is, in Portugal, I noticed motorcyclists passing each other, and they did this thing where they take their hands off accelerator and they wave like this. No, they did this thing where it was like this other weird wave. I was like, ha! I saw that. I saw both of them. So that's a different head nod thing, which was interesting for me. But the other thing as well, Rich, is it's like, I think that Vespers are basically like bicycles to motorcyclists. It's like it's one step. And don't get me wrong, I've owned 4 Vespers for 20 years of my life. Like, I love Vespers, right? But I think it's one step too far away somehow. It's like a motorcyclist nodding their head to a bicycle. Never going to happen. It's just never going to happen. For some reason, It's been classified one rung too far away for some reason.
Well,
I agree with you.
There's no gears,
no, but see, so I've had this debate, right? The gears is a weird debate, because if Tesla produces a motorcycle, or if you guys bought the Zero, right, which I've ridden in Kuwait when I was doing a speaking gig there, I went riding the Zero. It's an incredible bike, bike, right? So if I was on the street in a Zero, electric bike, there's more in common now with my Vespa and your KTM than there is between these two things. The one's just a big battery. You would head bob at the guy in the Zero. And then I think to myself, okay, well, maybe it's to do with the power of the bike, because there's a certain level of risk. But if you get a guy on a big boy motorcycle that looks like Suzuki, right? This guy's riding a 100cc bike next to my 300cc charged Vespa. Like my Vespa will murder those guys. Like, it leaves them in the wake. And yet still then they would nod at the person. So this guy's in a 100cc bike. If it was a 100cc electric bike, that would still be the case. It is the shape of the bike.
The shape.
That's crazy to people.
My point
on the belonging was more about that we look for output.
I think it's a male-female thing, Rich. I think there's a sense of is that the bigger bikes are more bravado, and a woman on a big bike, you'll still head nod, right? But it's got to do with the fact that potentially the Vespa is effeminate in nature. I wonder whether that's the separation, not the shape. The fact that, cute, you're on a little bike. It's not a real bike. Oh, you're girly. And that's, I don't want to get into the woke conversation and picking pronouns, but I wonder whether that's the association we made. Is
man,
the one
keeps on bringing it up though.
Okay. Can I drop my mind?
In the States, it's also the same thing. So wherever you go, it doesn't matter if the guy's on a bike. I don't see Vespas anywhere here, but you just drop your right hand or your left hand. It's like a straight down sort of 45-degree angle thing. But it's every bike does that. Every single biker.
But can I point out that is way more dangerous? That's way more dangerous than a head nod. Like, let's let go of the handlebars. It's like, why would you do that?
Yeah, it's a weird tradition thing. But I wonder if they would, because, I've actually ridden with American friends who came over here to ride, and, they very quickly, and the same thing that I would do over there, right? After 2 minutes of seeing people do this, you would start doing that. But so this is a small thing that you see it, and I say in motorcycles, but if you have a Defender, a Land Rover Defender, those guys will wave at each other. I
own a Toyota FJ, and I get this regularly out the window, like this. And I didn't know I know what this is, but I didn't realize that this was the FJ greeting.
Is it?
And I see it occasionally. True's God.
It's brandy and Coke.
So we're constantly, but look at what we're learning here in this discussion about belonging. We're constantly seeking ways to belong to something. And we gravitate to whatever it is. So, and this idea of having a common enemy, and I don't want to, because actually in South Africa, cars aren't the enemy, because actually cars are really lovely generally to motorcyclists here when you compare to around the world, right? They move away, they're super polite, but physically, cars are the enemy. The common enemy on a road, if you're a motorcyclist, the thing that's most likely to kill you is the bigger vehicles. So that common sense of being together with cars, and also I think the common enemy is people in cars are so protected that they feel they'll be more likely to pick up their phone and not pay attention. And it's so funny because when I'm on my motorcycle, if I ride past a guy who's swerving in the road because he's changing his song on Spotify, I'm like, what a fucking arsehole. But the next day when I take my car, I'm like doing it myself because then I'm like one of them.
So I
But
think,
Rich-
but hold on, we have to, I think unconsciously we have to belong to various groups. We have to. Because if we don't, we feel alienated, isolated, and because of that, then you feel alone. And that affects our emotions negatively and obviously our mental health. And to your point, Rich, the more independent connections that we feel, or belongings to, like whether that's a place or a club or a brand, like KTM versus Harley. Like, I'll never buy another Harley. I will only ever buy KTM. And I look at the Yamaha Tenere and the Honda and all that stuff, and I will only ever consider KTM, you see. And so as a consequence of that, I feel a sense of pride. I feel a sense of, that I'm able to express who I am as a person, as an identity. And that's powerful. And so this is why I think we need to belong. No, it's not even a wanting thing. Because, it fucking sucks if if you don't feel accepted into a group, right? Then it's like,
Okay,
so
but brand is really important here. Harley, Honda, KTM brand. But also what's important about that is that when you see someone with a similar brand, for your ego, it's affirmation that I made the right choice. It's like, he's also on that. He's a smart dude. I'm a smart dude. And we pat ourselves in the back when we see people that have made the same choice as us.
Yes.
Because it makes us feel like we've done the right stuff. And that gives a sense of belonging. It's validation,
it's why
right?
people dress the same way, right? If you see, and for people listening or watching,
the black t-shirts, just FYI.
Black T-shirt brigade. That's what this podcast should be called. Plain black tees. The plain black tees. But for people listening, and I'm gonna because I'm worried that we're now getting caught up. This is absolutely the MacGuffin in this is motorcycles, but the conversation is belonging. But it's incredible because have a look. If you see a guy you will not see a guy on a Harley meerkatting when they stand up on the pegs riding through traffic. But if you see a person on a GS, they will be standing up doing that thing. If you would never see a guy on a Harley wearing one of those GS jackets.
Yeah.
Like I could never ride a GS just because I couldn't wear that jacket. Right? So there's so much more to it. There's all of these things. They're reflections of your identity.
Choose.
And people say a lot about Harley, but wow, you'd be hard pressed to find an organization in the world that's created more sense of identity and belonging. They're a clothing business built around a motorcycle and a lifestyle.
It's a brand.
Yeah, no,
unbelievable.
It's incredible.
But can we pull the pin out of your McDonald's, Burger King? Like you said, let's come back to that. Have we covered that with motorcycles in principle, or is that a separate conversation?
I just wanted to get to business to say, so how do we do that as business leaders? Because it does make me think that, one of the challenges I have with Missing Link and maybe my team is that, the best we ever are is when we're up against something. I, as a leader, I'm a wartime leader. I need to be up against the wall. And I realize that I've kind of lost that a lot. So we go to war with boredom and bad things, but it's kind of it's a nebulous enemy. But when COVID was here, COVID was not a nebulous enemy. It was like a cool thing, and I got to go up and do it. I almost wonder if I don't need an aggressive competitor. Early on in my career, and I'm friends with the guys. I love them. I had lunch with them recently, but the man-made media guys, they were amazing for us because they would go out there and they would pitch for business. And the one stand-up band gig they won, and I thought I was so good in the pitch that I actually mailed them and said, guys, I have to buy you lunch because you deserve it because I was really good. And then we made a standing lunch after we pitched up to one person won, the other would buy them lunch, and it was great. But that common enemy, even though we were friends, that drove me harder to be better. And it gave my staff something to rally about. And speaking to you guys right now, if we are drawing a sense of belonging is, we need to have multiple points of belonging, but every point of belonging needs to have a counter-gravity. So you don't just belong to, you are removed from.
Against someone else.
You are against, yes. So I am pro X because I'm also against Y. And maybe we don't think enough about that. Like when businesses talk about building culture or doing this thing, they build it about themselves, but they don't build enough about the fact that what are we up against? What are we going to war with? Thoughts on that? And sorry, Matt, you were going to speak about this.
Yeah, so you're saying it's like what dragon as a team you want to slay, right? Is that kind of the?
Bro, what's happening there, Rich? Sorry, I just got a crotch shot.
He's just.
I went to pick up my magnets and my face camera and my face tracking did the rest.
It's a good thing that's the only thing
Sorry,
it's tracking.
Yeah.
Geez, yeah, So, Rich, are you saying that it's, you're against why it's the dragon, right? That you want to slay as a team.
Yes, we need it. And again, this goes back to, I guess, if I was to push a version of Here Be Dragons for teams, it would be that. It would be that humans are the most galvanized when they're at war with something. It's amazing. And it's like, have you ever seen those scenes where they're like the 1815 and Wellington's army, they're all praying and we're doing God's work and we're doing this. And then Napoleon's army, we're all doing God's work and we're all doing this. And it's amazing, right? That sense of belonging. And I think that actually as humans, as we get, because for the first time, and it sounds silly saying this now, sorry, I was listening to a guy on Piers Morgan this morning, and it was a dude who was very, very upset with Israel. And I really don't want to get into my views on that, but he was really, really upset about Israel's actions. And he was like, "It's so disgusting. Children are dying." And if I'm not mistaken, my understanding is that this has gone from being a conflict to being a war. Like Israel have said, we are at war, and war was never nice. Like you're telling me that children are being killed, right? But that war was, as soon as we got to total warfare. Primarily in the beginning of and I guess even before in like Genghis Khan, like there was always innocent victims. But I think that my point, fuck, I've lost my point. He was he's so adamant about one thing, and that he has this enemy that is enough to galvanize. And we definitely need to be up against something. And I think we need to think about that more. And I think it's a big part of our belonging.
Can I just say an interesting thing here, right? So, I mean, for the audience who don't know me by some chance by now, so business coach, right? And I'm not part of any federation or association of coaches. And what I find is that becomes really valuable for me. So when I'm being in a sales conversation and the guys will be like, "Do you belong to the International Coaching Federation?" And I go, "No, I completely think they're wrong. Their methodology is incorrect. It's too slow. It's this." And I make them my enemy. If they agree with me, now we have a common enemy. And it helps in my sales. It helps them to convert, right? Where if they believe in the coaching federation, then I'm wrong for them and cool, no problem. But figuring out just in what I do, I can have someone, a client, join my side of the turf, or on the war. And now we've got a common enemy. So if they've had a coach historically, there was an ICF accredited coach and it didn't work for them, it wasn't about the other coach. It's about the coaching federation and methodology. And that becomes a draw card to come to my side and be with me. So like figuring out what that is in businesses.
They didn't realize that. You point that out because then you just group a whole bunch of people as I have dealt with this scaling up guy. Oh, right. Oh, but it wasn't good. You're right, because scaling up might not be right for your business.
Yeah, so whatever they say to you, and that's what maybe this part of the lesson in terms of sales here, but when someone says to you something, if you can turn that something into a common enemy, if it's an enemy of theirs or they've had a bad service or they didn't get something out of it, and you can make that a common enemy, you bring them closer to you, you're more likely to convert them into a client. Simple sales tactic, right? But figuring that out. So I agree with you. Come to me, belong to me, against somebody else. The gravitational force is better.
In order to create a belonging, you need to have something else outside to drive you in. Right? So if you look at a great example of that is Walking Dead. Walking Dead is not a zombie movie. Walking Dead is a human dynamics, TV show. Is a human dynamics TV show or comic book that is facilitated by the fact that there is a common enemy of zombies outside the door. So, it's a very, very powerful thing. And I think as business owners, it's worth thinking about. We always say to people when we're selling to them, or when, the idea of you got to make it a 2-horse race, you versus the best of the other 4, which is what you did with your coaching federation. Thoughts, Matt?
Sorry, Matt.
It's interesting to go back to the bike thing. So took a year for our stuff to arrive from Joburg. Worst relocation story ever. Anyway, I had my KTM and my Harley Davidson jackets arrived with the helmet and whatever. So I had to go down to wherever I was going, and I didn't want to wear my KTM jacket because it was just like it was in another part of the garage. Ever, the closest thing to me was this Harley Davidson jacket. So I put in the Davidson jacket, and then I jump on the KTM, and I felt so at odds with myself. Because to your point, like it's X and Y, right? I'm for KTM. I'm actually against Harley now. But now I'm wearing the fucking jackets and I feel like a complete imposter. Do you know what I mean? Like which was quite a weird sort of, perspective to have because I was so pro Harley. And now my identity switched immediately. And it was just like, I actually felt like people in the cars around me were judging me for being on a KTM, wearing a Harley jacket. Like, why is he wearing a Harley jacket? Do you know what I mean? Like, how can you be?
And no one else saw it, and no one else cares. But I completely understand that completely.
And that's the conflict, right? Because you if you choose to belong to X, you have to be against Y.
But the same thing, you're not going to wear a BMW cap and drive a Mercedes, or a Mercedes cap and drive the Ferrari team for F1. It's like you have to comply with some of these unwritten rules around these brands and what they stand for. And you're either in or out, and you can be both, but not on the same day. Like it's interesting how you can belong to both.
I can be a Vespa rider on a Vespa day.
Yeah.
Yeah, and a Triumph rider on a Triumph day. But again, this is why we want to become agnostic. So when I moved from Mac, I hated being a Mac user. I now have a Mac again, but I am platform agnostic and I'm hardware. So I like the battery power of the Mac, but everything I use software-wise, I could open up my PC, my Razer Blade, and be totally fine working on that thing. I think we need to be careful. There is a cautionary aside of becoming too caught up in brands. So when I bought my Harleys, I had all the Harley jackets, the Harley gear. When I first bought my Triumphs, I bought the Triumph gear, and then, the Vespa gear. Now I have a Revit jacket. Like I found the motorcycle jacket that's completely independent, and that's the jacket I ride in. And now that's one where I can just be anything. There's a risk of being too all in because then you do become boxed. But some people want that, by the way. That is their entire identity. So if you have less connections, then you want to go more in on one of them.
So sorry, it's a short thing, and it was, I think it was one of the like NPR's, one of the podcasts, one of the business podcasts. What was the one? Was it not Built to Last? What was it called? How I Built This.
How I Built This, yeah.
Okay, I think it was one of these, but one of those, probably not that one. But there was the conversation in one of those podcasts. They talked about this brand. This is Upside Down Adidas, right? So they talked about the Adidas and the Puma story in terms of the two brothers, the Adi brothers, right? And the Puma, the Dazzler brothers. It was Adidas and Puma. Is that right?
Rudolph, yeah.
Okay,
Adidas
but there was
Rudolph, yeah.
But fundamentally, there was an underlying story that I think it was the Puma brother that supported the Nazi regime, and the Adidas brother was against it. And not that I haven't owned both brands, and not that I'm this raging Jew, but every time I buy something, I think about, am I buying Puma or Adidas? And I buy Adidas. Because somewhere deep down, like in their story, it was a anti-Nazi discussion. And it's amazing how like these subtle things...
When his brother arrived with his wife, he turned around and he said a statement. And it's kind of one of these weird things because he said something that she took to being an anti-Semitic statement, but he said was something completely different. But those battle lines were made on one misconstrued statement. It was quite interesting. But he later on showed that old Rudolph was more aligned to the Nazi party.
But what's interesting is that my belonging to Adidas versus my belonging to Puma has got nothing to do with their marketing. It's got to do with that story. And it's amazing how, like, deep down, I prefer one brand because of that. And I'm not brand loyal, but I'd 9 times out of 10 buy Adidas over Puma.
But it
It's
also
like-
goes to, let's go to that. Sorry, so go, Matt.
Yep.
Yeah, I think what Brent said it earlier, but it's a choice. You know what I mean? Like whether you're choosing Adidas or Puma, or whether you heard that story, or whether it's got nothing to do with brand, like the complexity of decision making and the underlying psychology in the context of which brands or clubs or communities or places you belong to, doesn't matter what that irrespective connection group is or opportunity is, it always comes down to choosing what's right for you at that point in time, so that you can feel like you're connected to something that allows you to express who you are as part of your identity.
And if you can't, you should look for it. I think people should try find things to be connected to, and we should increase our connection points, our belonging points, our belonging anchors. I think they're very.
Well, that sense of belonging is important. I mean, like that's the saying, right? It is important.
And it's easy to fulfill. As an aside, I always think it's quite funny how blind we are to our own biases. When I remember once walking into Cresta years ago with my ex, and there was all that, like I was very much into my middle of my punk rock phase. So I was probably in my Dickie shorts and my DC shoes, those big fat ones, remember, skate shoes with the ankle socks, and I was walking into Cresta, and I saw these ravers walk past me. They had that raver look. And I was like, turn around to my ex. I was like, oh, look at them. Don't they feel so stupid? They all look the same. They're so like this and so like that. And why don't they just dress normally? But they have to try too hard. And then that evening, I walked into like Thrasher's skate park. And I realized, oh, I'm so big on identifying about being different. But I'm not being different. It took me about 1 month of being involved in the punk rock community to start dressing completely and utterly like them, like a skater. Even though up until that point, I'd never been a skater. But I liked skater punk, so that's who I became. I learned to skate because of my passion in music, not the other way around. Like, it's so crazy. And I, for years, judged other people on trying to just, be different and or fit in, only to realize that every subculture is a version of fitting in. All goth people think they look different, but they look the same. All, again, no, it makes no sense to me that, I can tell you if somebody's trans from behind based on the fact that they have a little teddy bear hanging off their backpack and colored hair, right? Like those two cues alone will tell me everything they need to know. Heck, if they're wearing a mask at a certain age, I know what they are. And this is we always want these cues to show the world that we believe the same thing.
But why do we go searching for this? Like, it's obviously a natural instinct to belong. Is it instinctual because, a couple of thousand years ago, if we didn't have a group, we'd die. There was strength in numbers, fight the bears. Do you think it's that deep that we look for that community? Is the Seth Godin tribes thing? Do you reckon that's why we go looking for it?
I would say so, yeah.
It's
Thousands of years of needing to belong, because if you didn't, you would die. Safety in numbers, takes a village to raise a child,
But with that in mind then, right? So what's interesting about that is it's like Rich picking punk rock and you picking KTM. If you can decide which communities and associations and places you want to become part of, then from a survival perspective, go where the money is, go where the brains is, go where the opportunity is. So like, would you not do that there? So like, you go to Colorado, I'm saying, well, if you actually wanted to make money, hypothetically, you want to be a white male in Silicon Valley in tech, go find that community, because that's probably where you're going to make a lot of money if that's the objective, right? So like, should you not start thinking about it with an outcome versus just, I'm looking for community?
Do either of you guys know my friend Tricker? Brent, you may have seen him on the snowboarding groups and stuff like this.
Yeah. Like you've spoken about him, yeah.
Yeah, so Tricker is very interesting. So Tricker, he's like tattooed, he's like Christian guy, motorcycle rider, things like this. So there's a lot of like different touch points he has. But one of the things that's interesting, so I once arrived at his house in London. He's pretty wealthy and a good entrepreneur. And I walked in and he's always got these flash cars. And he was like, hey, I'm picking up a Lamborghini today. I was like, it's so crazy to me because it's not your identity. Like, I don't even look at you and think of you as a Lambo guy. And I didn't think of him as a Ferrari guy and he's got a Ferrari in the garage. And he said, no, you don't understand. I moved to this country and I don't know anyone. So we moved into an area and we sent our kids to a certain school. That's connection number one. Then I bought myself a Ferrari and I immediately joined the Ferrari club. And I went on every single drive I could with the Ferrari club. And then I connected to those people. And then I joined the Lamborghini club. And I went on every single ride I could with the Lamborghini club and I connected with those people. So he was very surgical about, hey, the kind of person I am and business I do and people I interact with, this is who I need to connect with. And so he basically hacked his belonging. And the common ground of Ferrari people in the Ferrari club is they drive Ferraris. And so by virtue of the fact, it's the same with the EO, right? I'm a member of an entrepreneurs organization. It's a immediate connection. If an EO reaches out to me and says, I need your help, or I would immediately trust them just because we both pay dues to the same organization. And there is more to it than that, but bizarrely, that's often enough. And so I think being very intentional, especially when you move somewhere, like I think Tricker did a really good job of hacking the system. He was like, okay, these are the kind of people I want to be part of. Matt goes to Colorado. He says, cool, I want to be connected. To go gets his KTM, goes and finds the guys and puts his hand up to join a bunch of rides. 2 rides in on the weekend, and he's been invited to go ride with some guys probably in the mountains. 2 of those down the line, and now they're like, he's part of something.
Yeah.
But you have to, this is what we're going back to the beginning. You've got to opt in. You've got to decide, right? You've got to be intentional about it. And you cannot, when they say about mountain climbing, you can only let go one piece at a time before you move. If you've got all of your claws still in South Africa, but you're far away, you've not been able to take any part off in order to disconnect and move somewhere else. And that's the problem. That's why we have to let go. And you'll never not be patriotic and you'll never not be South African, but you do have to let go of the life you had in, the tip of Africa if you want to do well somewhere else in the world.
And weirdly enough, last thing, even in your current environment, right? So even if, like you're talking about immigration and moving overseas and stuff, like the fact is that even, I'm in Joburg, I may not move for a very long time. Even that is going, well, I should probably join the elite tennis club and the elite golfers, I don't know what the right terminology for golf is, right? But I'm saying is you can still make the decision to move into organizations and communities and belong with some kind of desired outcome. You don't have to move to do that, right? So you have the ability to do that within your current environment today. And are you joining the right groups? And are you, and not maliciously, because you should hopefully enjoy golf and enjoy tennis, but pick the right tennis club.
First of all, if you enjoy golf or enjoy tennis, you're in my out group.
You're the enemy.
Yeah, I'm sending you out into the cold. Like it's yeah. But again, that's the thing, right? Like I part of my in-group is not playing golf.
Sure.
Yeah. Bizarrely, it's like it's a weird thing. So in Cape Town down here, Matt's trying to get us off. He's like, geez, guys, shut up. But in South Africa at the moment, everybody plays paddle. And that's enough reason for me not to play paddle.
Okay, last thing, and the motorbike thing. When I ran that business bikes and breakfast years ago, it was the entrepreneurs who own motorbikes. I did it deliberately during the week. And the reason being is on the very first session, one of the guys went, fuck the golfers. This is our golf. And guess what? Now all of a sudden the motorcyclists go, yo, we don't play golf. We ride motorbikes. And that was the galvanizing enemy, the golfers. So the motorcyclists hate the golfers and it made us closer. So common enemy, exactly, right? Belong.
Yeah, rad.
Right,
fun,
guys.
boys.
That's been fun. Always a pleasure.
Always a pleasure. Never a chore. Thanks, guys. We'll see you all again soon. When's the next one anyway? Is that scheduled?
We better do sooner
Get
than
your
later.
PA to reach out to my PA.
4 days next week.
A silent retreat. Guys. How are you going to cope?
Yeah. I can't wait. It's going to be so easy.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. All right, guys. Thanks
send us voice notes. All right, chat to you later.
Cheers, everyone. Ciao, ciao.
Cheers, man.
Ciao.
Bye.